TrekWars, Duels Across the Stars. Episode 19. I am the Senate. Top 5 leaders.
The Galactic Empire has fallen. Elections for the new republic have started, where we will vote for our top 5 leaders. A plot is underway by Section 31, the Federation's Secret Service. Their agent, Lieutenant Commander Bosch, is seeking to add his own representatives into places of influence in the new republic. Can Section 31 get their way for Star Trek, or will Star Wars win the day? 3 people will help decide who has the best leaders. Welcome to our July the 4th / Election Day special. If you don't know, we are going into elections tomorrow in the UK, and probably in America you feel like it's probably been going on forever. And if we have anybody from France, hope the election went well. I'm not sure when your second round is, but hopefully it went well. Today we've got a returning guest who I know from the Hailing Frequencies YouTube channel, and that is...
Well, my name's Matt, but on Hailing Frequencies, I'm known as Commander Bosch, who is the Chief Medical Officer on the Livingston, a fantastic ship. We're on a little bit of a hiatus at the moment. Basically, life has kind of got in the way for all of us, and trying to get us in one place to record at the moment has been interesting, to say the least.
I can imagine. I know we've had Stu on from Hailing Frequencies as well, talking about starships and no, was it? No, it was Mothers. I think we had for our Mother's Day special, and we've had Matt before, and I think our third episode where we talked about top 5 villains. So
top 5 villains. So we're in pretty much the same list, I think.
Yeah. Not far off.
Top 5 leaders, villains, and crooks. I think with the 3 episodes, it's pretty much the same.
Yeah, not
Very
bad.
well could be.
Anyway, and I haven't mentioned my name, but if you don't know already, I'm Ben, and my co-host today and always is...
Tom, aka Olympus. It's lovely to be back here again. Good to see you again as well, Matt. Looking forward to getting into this. Top 5 leaders, very, very tricky subject, I found. So I kept my rule very, very vague, but we'll get to that in a minute, I guess. Just a couple of things that I would like to jump in very quickly right now and plug. Please hit that like and subscribe button if you've been enjoying our content. We really, really appreciate it. And please also feel free and encourage you to drop into the comments your top 5 leaders across Star Trek and Star Wars. We'd love to get that conversation rolling offline too.
Yeah. Feel free to share this with anyone else that you think might be interested as well.
Please do.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. No, it'd be nice to have people's thoughts in there as well, and yeah. Anyway, I won't go on because I don't like. Even though I probably should plug it a lot more, I don't like doing it.
I force myself to do it. It's something I have to force.
Okay.
So,
we don't actually share our picks beforehand, so this is going to be new for all of us. We've just said we've struggled with the picks and our rules, and thinking about that, shall we get on to our rules? Shall we start with Mad Turnip? I'm pointing that way, but I don't know if he's actually that way or not. That way.
I'm that side on my screen, but who knows?
And actually, yeah, because I'm the one, I've just done wrong as well because I've got OBS on my other screen. So, Ben, you want to point diagonally down like that.
That way or that way?
That way.
Yeah, that's the one.
Or is it that way? I don't know. Because I also can't tell whether you've got your screen inverted or not. Yeah, exactly, Matt.
Hey ho.
Who knows? Who knows?
Who knows? Anyway, Matt, what was your rules for your coming up with your list to help you pick it?
I had two rules, essentially. One is I used the Center for Creative Leadership and their 12 essential leadership qualities to try and fit within what I would term. So that was helpful as a framework. And then I decided to make this infinitely more complicated for myself. Is that I said no main captains.
Oh, you did make it
Because
difficult.
arguably, and I've done this, but arguably, there are very few good leaders in Star Wars, and actually written specifically for that. Most of them within a sort of a pseudo-fascist dictatorship, they're all written to be flawed leaders. That's the point. So it kind of makes it a little bit like a much smaller pool to choose from. Whereas Star Trek, all the main captains are written to be good leaders as the very point. And so it's like, well, to try and balance out between, I took all of those out, knowing that there was a smaller pool on there, just to try and give it a fairer balance. But it did make it much more complicated because obviously Picard would be the top of every list just by virtue, But so I made no, there's nothing from main cast captains. I even kind of ticked it back to no, not really any main cast at all, to be honest. Although there's arguably a couple of them, depending on where in the seasons and bits and pieces, they could be seen as main characters, but they're not. I've sort of gone, Kirk's gone, and even down to the likes of like Sulu or Spock or uh, like the Doctor, or just basically anything within that. I removed those. I was mainly kind of cutting out the Picards, the Ciscos, that kind of thing. But yeah, so that was my rule: was no main captains, and could I track them on a what's seen as a leadership goal list.
I like it. I
I'm
like it.
intrigued. I definitely like it. Olympus, what were your rules, if any? You said you
Well,
left it a bit loose, but
well, I purposely made my rule extremely loose, so I actually felt like I had some choice. So I've done the exact opposite Matt did. And that is the character must have at least 1 point held a leadership role or position, i.e., they were in charge of or led people, which I feel opens up past political leaders or the likes, or even captains necessarily on a starship. It completely opens that up. So yeah, I went with that. In terms of definition of a leader, totally in my own head. Did not go, and part of me wishes I had. I was considering doing it, but then I thought, you know what? I've struggled with this open rule that I've given myself. I'm not going to restrict myself anymore. How about you, Ben?
fair enough. Well, I think I've got another way as well, because we came up with this was inspired by the UK election coming up. So I decided to go down almost the political route when it comes to leaders. But I did open it up that there has to be some sort of organisation, planet, ruling body. It's allowed to be a senator of a planet or somebody who's essentially ruling a planet, but it could be a business as well. Um, it has to be an official group, and it has to be an official or nearest damn official position when it comes to that. So it's not, let's say, a de facto rule, a position. It can be done by however that group of organisations organise that, and it tends to have to be the top person or next to top person. So if it was, let's say, the UK, it would have to be the king or whoever is actually nearest damn it really in charge, which is the prime minister. So it had to be one of those two positions. And I decided with like things like captains and stuff like that, I was not going to go that. If I was going to do it, it would have to be the chief of command, the actually the CNC in charge of the whole organisation. If I was going to go down that front, so that sort of grouped restricted to me to not having a top 5 Vista captains. So it was there. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a political body, even though we'll find out on my 5th pick that this person was a bit more political than she should have been. So,
Okay.
oh, and my thought actually, before I go at it, it's not necessarily my top, who I think is the top 5 best leaders. I decided to go for 5 stories that characters, leaders that I like their story.
Okay.
And then once I got that story, I put them in order of who I think was best. Either I would either like to rule under them, or I thought done the best job for their people. So
Interesting.
it does give opportunities for absolutely terrible leaders. So
That
Terrible
makes
people rather than terrible leaders. I would have thought
uh,
because I've got one that is definitely would be an honourable mention, and she very nearly made the list. But yeah.
that's the thing. You can be a terrible person and still be a brilliant leader.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
very true.
there's some big problems in a few of these, but yeah.
Yeah, I've got ones where, oh, actually, probably 2 of them are terrible people. One would be a good leader, and the other one actually, from our perspective, was a terrible leader, but a terrible person and a terrible leader.
I'm wondering if my honourable mention is on your list.
Oh,
Oh.
probably is. Anyway, shall we get going before we scout around that issue for too long and we get to the point? Tell you what, I'm going to pick myself to go first this time, just because I'm talking. So I'm going to go with it and get this person out of the way. Um, this person is a Star Trek character
Mm-hmm.
and is a not, even though she tried to not be a political leader herself, tried to influence political leaders, and she is basically the space pope, aka Kai Wynn of the of the Bajoran people. She is the religious, got voted in pretty early in to become the Kai of the, or our equivalent of Bajor's equivalent to the Pope. Um, got voted in by the Vedics, and even though she is not the leader of the planet, she is the political, basically the religious and
Spiritual.
probably looked up to person for the planet that everybody basically looks up to. And obviously, she done. I liked her arc, and she was a bad guy in this. And the thing is, we knew she was a bad guy. Kieran Nerys, the second command, knew she was a bad guy. Ben Sisko, and most of the main cast in Deep Space Nine. But for her to get in there, she had to have either influenced a lot of people in the Vedic Assembly and the people, because you never really saw many of the people around DS9, like the day-to-day Percy people, hating her.
Well,
She was, yeah.
to put her into a kind of, and this is we're in a political show, so there might be there's some conversations to this, but arguably a version of her, there is some similarities into Nelson Mandela. Not so much
Mm.
later things, but she was imprisoned and beaten, and during the occupation, she used taking gems from a temple to like bribe officers to be able to like let people. So she, yeah, in her arc, she saw herself as doing everything she possibly could to help ease the occupation. She just never picked up a weapon to do it, and so was very, very pun intended, nose put out of joint, by the resistance taking all the credit for like finishing everything off. And obviously, she was then also really annoyed that what she saw as another occupying force in the Federation came in that were, you know, there's a whole set of reasons why she went off the rails a little bit. I mean, trying to assassinate Bareil and bits and pieces doesn't really, you know, but and it goes back into
It
that.
doesn't help her own case.
Yeah, it goes into that kind of every villain is a hero in their own story, and she was very much everything that she possibly could do for Bajor. She just pushed it a little far by certain standards.
I think she's a great example of someone who is actually, as much as she's seen as a bad guy in the majority of DS9, is very much just out trying to do her very best. She's always got the best of intention in everything that she does, and she just goes about a lot of it the wrong way, and she does lose herself through everything that you've just gone through as well, Matt.
Quite legitimately loses herself, becomes a vessel for the power wraiths.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Dum-dum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was my
Yeah,
honorable
yeah.
mention.
Oh,
Fair,
nice.
She
cool.
was the almost made the list, but I did try, and otherwise I would have completely wiped out one franchise if I kept putting her in.
So you were right then. That is it was on Ben's list.
Ah, cool.
Nice.
I like that. Yeah. Um, yeah, she, as I said, yeah, no, I enjoyed the story arc of her being not necessarily the chief protagonist, but was one of the top protagonists against that. And she just narrowly outpaced somebody else that I did have there and decided to take off for rules reasons. So, but to be honest, you two said it perfectly well. So I'm thinking I don't need to say much more, even though I've gone on way too much. So, shall we put our guest in the middle?
Let's go for it. Why not?
It's a very different type of show.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
Um,
I was wondering if anybody would yeah, go on that, but
my fifth pick, and he was third at one point, but I bounced him down. Is Dumas. Now he was the second in command to Ducat, who was also a possible on the list, but also he was my top villain, so I took him out from almost the same reasons I took out sort of the captains and bits and pieces. Now, just to go for my pick list of the 12 characteristics: self-awareness, respect, compassion, vision, communication, learning, agility, collaboration, influence, integrity, courage, gratitude, and resilience. Now, Dumas, for all the things that he kind of threw away, had all of those qualities. They could be kind of referenced in um, the fact that his turn at the end was he was trying everything to kind of make Cardassia back to the powerhouse it was. He'd gone in with the Dominion, he was back, and he was just constantly kind of just people being wiped out, and he realized that was the worst thing for Cardassia and started the rebellion. His dying words was telling people to fight on. He kind of he took everything that he saw and just it had the um, kind of, even though it slipped quite away, had the integrity to kind of to pick it up. He used what his learning of how the Dominion treated people and from the inside to then use that to change. So the self awareness, he realized how bad he was doing, which is why he became a drunk. Like he was using the alcohol to numb the pain. Yes, it's not the best way of wouldn't say that's the way to lead, but all those qualities that make a leader he just didn't always focus them in the right direction. So as a quick one, that's how I I put Damar at number 5.
yeah, no, I love Damar as a character. Basically, heading by an extra, or not an extra was a line in the undercut ship to becoming
Mm.
Becoming a second command to Cup, then to go in. Oh, I'll take over the leadership for here. I'll do for my best for Kadasi. I'll just and then go and
I
go.
mean, he
Actually, wait a minute.
became the leader of Cardassia in during the Dominion peace. Um, yeah, just there's so much there. Um, it just all went a bit Pete Tong for him.
Yeah, and then even though and he was fighting back the way he done, and then realised it's like things change. This and it was and to excuse something that happened in the episode, he looked in the mirror and went, "We need to change as a group of people. not just with the
He-
Dominion, but
He let Worf murder Wayoon 6.
Yep.
Maybe I can't remember what number,
think
but he
so.
yeah.
So, because I think the last one was 7, I think, and that, or was it? Maybe. Oh, anyway.
I can't remember.
Yeah. And yeah, it was just like, yeah, I don't mind somebody helping me, and we realised some of my friends, some of the people I respect most, still in the dark ages, and that they can't change. They have to change, otherwise they're no use to us. So, and it would have been nice to see what's happened to him if he lived after the occupation, after DS9. So, any thoughts, Olympus?
Not too many extra, no. You guys have covered that off very nice, and I hadn't thought of them all, so that was a lovely little surprise. Guess on to my number 5 then. I'm going to steer us away from Star Trek for a moment. Now this is a character who I probably had sitting at number 3 or number 2 at one point, and has dropped down to number 5 just before we started recording. He is part of Star Wars: The Old Republic, the multiplayer online game. You first see him in the base game on the Jedi Knight story. The almost omniscient Sith Emperor. But it's not that incarnation of him I'm talking about. Ben's eyes just lit up. I'm talking about the much more present and dominating Emperor Valkorion of Zakul in the Knights of the Fallen Empire and
Eternal Throne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two absolutely phenomenal expansion stories to Star Wars: The Old Republic. If anyone's not played those, I highly recommend them after the base game. He is a presence to be absolutely struck by. When you think that he had this entire Sith Empire being run with him barely even glancing at it, everyone thought he was present and just not coming out of the shadows, and he was running the show. It was actually the Dark Council running the show for the Sith Empire the entire time without them really realizing it, whilst he was busy focusing all his time and effort on the Zakulan Empire, and building that up from strength to strength. And you can tell the difference right away. His people, I mean, he's not a nice person, let's get that out there. He is still the evil bad guy, but he's a flesh and blood being, for starters. His people and his society are not trodden on. They're not quashed. They're not in any form of squalor or hard situation like that. I'm talking about the general populace. You know, they're all doing very well. They all have a purpose. They all revere him. You don't have that level of instability and power struggle that you have in the Sith Empire. So yeah, at fear of starting to ramble, he did a lot of things right in his time, his efforts, and his focus, and his leadership of Zakul. He starts to lose that with the ambitions of his children, in particular Valen. That's when it all starts falling apart, and I don't know what else much to say apart from probably one of the best enemies of a Star Wars game I've come across.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd say as a leader, he was successful because he created that empire from nothing, and they all followed him. They weren't brainwashed. He inspired his people. It might not be the direction that we would necessarily want a good leader, a good person to take a society down, but he did it, and he did it well.
Yeah. Other than his how he was going to go about his succession was not necessarily the best way.
He does start
which was gonna-
losing. He does start losing it a little bit when you get to the start of the expansion, to be fair.
Yeah, which was okay. Maybe that was your character he was trying to get in charge, maybe, but having to get you to fight his children who were oh at least two of them were slightly loopy at one point. It was, just to put it nicely, it was just like losing the plot.
Yeah, it was
Or
only
very
Perfection that was really relatively sane, and he was unfortunately murdered before the expansion even starts.
Yeah. And yeah, and actually, if you go by the third person, he was in charge of at least two different organizations, even though the other one didn't. Oh, to be honest, I don't think any of them did well in. Oh, no, I suppose the Eternal Empire sort of did well in the end, depending on how your character runs it afterwards.
Indeed.
So, I don't suppose, Matt, you got any thoughts, have you?
No, it's not one I'm particularly au fait with. I played Kota, but I've not played it in the expansions, and that was a while ago.
Was it the same Emperor who was there at Kota? I know you've played that Olympus. I haven't. I'm not sure if it.
I'm trying to think. No, so you don't see a Sith Emperor in Knights of the Old Republic. It's Revan and Malak during those. Knights of the Old Republic 2 is the same, but they're both telling very different kinds of stories.
Yeah.
Star Wars: The Old Republic is when you first see the Sith Emperor. And I think
And he was really old by then.
I think it's he was already quite old, and I think it was the Jedi Knight stories, the first point in the timeline you come across him. Although I can't remember if you do see him in the console story or not, which tells me it's time for me to replay it.
Actually, what I mentioned before, I do have another honourable mention from the Star Wars side, and the only reason that he isn't in the list is that I don't know enough about him. I've seen little bits and thought, oh, and then he came up on some stuff I was looking at, but because I don't know, I haven't seen enough of it to feel like I really put him on the list.
I look forward to hearing about that.
Oh, intrigued. Yeah. And actually, that change the subject. I think I'll go into my fourth pick. This person nearly didn't make it because I don't know enough about their backstory, appearing in some of the other animated series. But this person made so much of an impression on me during The Mandalorian, and yeah, I think it was just The Mandalorian. Oh, I have a feeling she did appear in something else. But Bo-Katan Kryze, he became the leader of the Mandalorians people. I love her character. I was listening to videos and stuff about her backstory. Then this is probably the reason she was so low. She was active and against a rebellion against her own sister and her own people because she didn't agree with their politics. Maybe that was right. Maybe that was wrong. I haven't watched it enough and to give a proper opinion. But even then, that's not necessarily fully on. But at the stage where we see her in The Mandalorian, I think it's we're in 4th seasons, aren't we? Complete? Or are we 3 seasons?
I'm gonna have to Google that just now.
But whatever happened, where at the end of that, this looks prominent. She's gone through a story, and at this current stage, she looks quite sane and a good leader for your stereotypical Mandalorians and joining everybody together. As a character, I love her character. It's the way it was written, the way she is acting and helping people, and I just love the character. I don't know a better way to put it, but it was just like
3 seasons.
she's such an interesting character. 3 seasons, thank you. I think it's supposed to they're maybe talking about a 4th season.
The Book of Boba Fett was like a 50% Mando season anyway.
It was, so it's really 3.5.
Yeah.
You know, Bo-Katan Kryze develops so much from when you see her in Clone Wars to when you see her, because you see her a couple of times through The Mandalorian, but particularly towards the end of season 3. You can see that character development the whole way through. You're absolutely right. She's in a much more stable place from a mental health point of view by that point.
Yeah.
And she's also coming to realize that there's a lot more to potentially believe in the Mandalorian old way mythos. She's one of those types of people that needs to see to believe a lot of the time, and her seeing. Oh, spoiler alert for anyone who's not seen it, but it has been a while. Seeing the mythosaur under the water on Mandalore just it's totally made her brain switch. She's reconsidering her entire look
She's
at
also
life
gone,
now.
gone from a place of pure isolation. So obviously, when Mando turns up to the palace, it's just her. I don't think you see anybody else in there whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Might be some, but no, actually, there might be a
No, I think
droid.
it was empty.
Because
There's at
she's
least a
just
droid, but I mean, you can't call
yeah.
the droid company too much unless it's like C3PO.
It was just her on the throne. Nothing, nobody. Just a big empty, very beautiful
Hers,
architecturally stone.
Mm.
yeah, and her lounging around on that, where it was just like, that's intriguing. I like that, and it's just like, yeah, I think she accepted her fate to being, this is over, and it's just like, I've lost. But no, it's the story of her building back up again, that I liked, as well as like the fights and her interactions with everybody there. There, Ahsoka, Djarin, Baby Yoda, old Grogu. So, but it was just that story, and that's why she's there. But in my this, because I just love the story, but because of the story I've heard in the background, she had to go right down to 4. Or she is definitely better than Kai Wynn in my head, but definitely by a long country mile. But anyway, next
4.
person is for their 4th pick is Matt.
So
Matt
I got my
Turner.
4th pick, but I've also. Do you want what would have been my honourable mention, as would have been my lowest um, Star Wars pick?
Go
I'll just
for
say
it.
Commander Rex
Oh,
would have been a pick, but I don't. I said I've only seen bits of it, and I know he gets expanded and is sort of. I think he would have been in there had I known more. But my actual 4th pick is moving on to Star Wars is Mon Mothma.
Ooh.
I think arguably one of the better, more sane leaders through Star Wars canon. Obviously started off as a senator, which you see in Andor, and then became a general of the rebellion, which you obviously see in Return of the Jedi, I think, wasn't it?
mm-hmm.
For about 10 seconds, I think.
Yeah.
And then in the expanded sort of piece, she becomes the leader of the New Republic once the Empire is defeated. So she goes the full gamut of trying to do things in a purely political way, and is a very, very good politician, a very good leader, but keeps losing everything constantly, just loss after loss. And what I said at the beginning about one particular character, I can't remember if this was pre-stream or not, having kind of parallels within the American political system. She has been likened to Nancy Pelosi, is a very good politician, but just ultimately loses consistently in the time that she's had, especially in more recent memory. So yeah, and then you could see, there's that really in Andor, really interesting. She goes from really trying to do everything by the book politically to just reaching out to realizing that you you she can't fight a fair fight anymore because nobody she's fighting against is fighting fair. So she's trying not to do too many things that are untoward, and then but obviously brings in Skarsgård. I can't remember the character's name, but the antiques dealer to do that
I
sort of
can't
thing.
either. I'm trying to remember, but I know who you're on about.
But
But
yeah,
yeah.
I think for all of the flawed and actively terrible leaders within that universe, she is a fairly shining light of them.
Oh, I generally agree. At the moment, I'm not going to say much more. Olympus.
I'm not surprised. I do not have her in my top 5, but she was in it at 1 or 2 points. And she was in my honorable mentions. I don't think you could go through an episode of Top 5 Leaders in Star Wars without mentioning Mon Mothma, so I'm really glad that you had her on your list. I really like how we are seeing so much more of her in the expanded TV shows now, like Andor and Rebels. I love seeing her in Rebels again as well. I was expecting her in Andor, wasn't expecting her in Rebels. So I guess that's
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, Ben.
Yeah, no, I was about to say I haven't actually seen the Rebels thing, but I know I've seen pictures of her in it. So
Not Rebels,
yeah.
Ahsoka. Sorry.
Ahsoka.
I think she was in Rebels actually. Now I think about it,
I think it
I
was
meant Ahsoka.
one of the cartoon series. I think it was anyway. Yeah. But yeah, in Ahsoka, yeah, that was anyway.
She was in the Clone
I will
Wars
have.
and Rebels, apparently.
She was in Clone Wars too. Wow, didn't realize
She
that.
was 3 Clone Wars episodes and in 5 Rebels episodes.
Nice. I just love. I love that we've been able to see more of her character and her character getting fleshed out that bit more, because there wasn't enough of her in the movies.
No, so it was like, yeah, 26 seconds or something she was in for Return of the Jedi.
Far too short.
So Olympus, your number 4 pick.
My number 4 pick is Obi-Wan Kenobi. Who is he is my favorite Star Wars character. I've picked him from a perspective of being a Jedi Master on the Council. So he was definitely involved in training younglings in the temple, from having his Padawan, Anakin Skywalker, leading him, and also from the perspective of being a general in the Grand Army of the Republic, leading the clones and other Jedi. So 3 different leadership roles that he that require different skills across all of them that I think he met brilliantly. But there's a very sad tragedy to Obi-Wan Kenobi in that no matter what he does and what he tries, he always loses in a very similar way to one of the other characters we were talking about earlier on. No matter what he does, and it's a slower burn, I guess, but no matter what he does, he's always going to lose something at the end of it. He loses Qui-Gon. He loses his I've forgotten her name now. Mandalore, his love interest, who was another Kryze. It was Bo-Katan's sister. He loses her. He loses Anakin. He loses. then he sacrifices himself in episode 4. So
strike me down, and I'll become more powerful than you could possibly imagine.
Indeed.
That's the one.
So
yeah,
it's a shame. He was such a phenomenal leader, but again, he was always destined to fail.
Yeah, he was, and until you mentioned some of the stuff he was leading in, I was going, really? He was just in charge of Anakin, and it was just like,
watch the Clone Wars, Ben. How many episodes do I have to tell you this? Watch the Clone Wars.
Yeah, and it's just, but yeah, even if you're on about just the being a general in the army, being on the Senate, not the Senate, on the Jedi Council, it's of course he is a leader, and unfortunately, in any other time, he would have probably been, he's still a great Jedi, but he would have been known as a great leader.
To bring that to life a little bit as well, right? Episode 1 of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, there's a Jedi who is on the run, who finds himself on Tatooine. He spots Obi-Wan and he manages to catch him at night time to try and ask for his help. this Jedi who recognizes Obi-Wan instantly, knows who he is, knows the story, knows his history, and Obi-Wan doesn't have a clue who this lad is. You can just tell the way he's looking at him. He doesn't have a foggiest. That tells you right away how well known and respected he was. And I put that down to leadership.
Fair enough. No argument there. And to be honest, to get onto the Jedi Council, which doesn't look that big, at least from what we've seen, we don't know exactly how many members there are, but if it's the amount of seats that are in the
12 or something, like maybe a bit less.
Maybe. Actually, we may know how many it is, and I just don't know, is the honest truth. But
we should get a 360
view
view of the council chamber and count the chairs.
Yes. Yeah, that's probably the way to do it. That's what I'm thinking. Is like, how many chairs are there?
That or Google, because Google always has the answers.
I'm Googling it now. And
there you go.
Or it being, well, I mean, I go things quickly. That's how. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known how many episodes Bon Mothra was in off the top of my head. At least one series I haven't worked.
No, which is fair enough. But then again, that's to get onto such a small group is out of such a big area. From what you said, we don't know. There's a lot of Jedi and Padawans and younglings out there, so you're not going to know everybody. And even from a conversation from one of the thing is trying to remember all the planets in the Empire in the Republic can't be done even by Obi-Wan. It's like he cannot remember every single planet. So there's lots.
I was correct. Yeah. 12 seats on the council.
Nice one. And bear in mind as well, from a size perspective, right? So you've got 12 Jedi Masters on the council. There are more Jedi Masters than that, but you've got 12 Jedi Masters on the Grand Council. There are 10,000 Jedi total scattered across the galaxy. And that number isn't enough to fight this war. They need those 10,000 to lead troops. That just gives you a picture of the grand scale that everything was being fought at.
And members of the council kept. So Cypher Diaz, I think, was on the council at one point and fell. And was Dooku on the council? Or was just he was a master?
I'm not sure. I think he was just a master. But Cypher Diaz, I forgot he was on the council, and he just randomly disappears at some point. And obviously we know what ends up happening to him. But
and there's lots of people that appear through each film. It's like you've got that long-haired guy. You've got another one that's Yoda species who I don't feel.
Yaddle. Is it Yaddle?
Yaddle? Yeah, Yaddle. And it's just like this hasn't been mentioned in the films anyway, what species they are, and to my knowledge, still hasn't. I googled it the other day, but it's you see them appear and disappear, and lots of different people there. I'm glad you picked him. I didn't actually. I was going to do a prediction to this again, but I didn't, and he wouldn't have actually been on there. So, but you surprised me there.
Oh, brilliant! That's what I like to do.
Anyway, was my number 3 pick. This person, when they first appeared, it was just, who is this person? I don't care about that person. It's somebody just talking to the camera. Don't care. And then when this person reappeared in several TV programs, including Andor, it was just like, I love this character. And this is Mon Mothma. It's the way she tried to act like a senator to do it politically, as said, and then having to backstab, or not quite backstab away, is try to political herself, backstage politics to get herself and everything in the right place. actually, I think she probably is a good senator, and probably somebody I would willingly vote for, possibly. This is the first person I would actually, go. I would probably actually vote for them in an election. Um, um, and to be honest, the reason why she is so low down, or halfway through my top five, I don't know if this is an official canon, but in one of the books I've heard, or one of the somewhere, that she basically ended up giving up power from the New Republic and giving it straight to Leia. Which, oh, cool. She's giving it to one of the main characters, but that's like the Empire. It's like giving it to that's just passing over. You don't let her vote. But I don't know how true that is in the exact circumstances, but
It does
that's
explain
probably
why
why.
it does explain why she isn't present in the new trilogy. Because I did always wonder that why all of a sudden is the resistance as it is by that point Mon Mothma less.
Yeah, and that's probably in thinking about that. That's another reason why she's down at 3 is because the New Republic just went to, excuse my language, but beep into a. Oh no, I didn't even swear there, but beep into a handbag
It does.
and
It doesn't though.
falling.
No, just thinking about it though in Ahsoka, because that's New Republic era.
It is.
Mon Mothma is still there as like the lead senator, so she's still leading it all at that point. So that's obviously before the sequel trilogy, but she's still there at
It
that
is.
point.
So she was supposed to be in the prequel trilogy, but the scenes were cut.
Ah,
And she was, yes. Yeah, I've seen that one. Her, Organa, and Queen Padme Amidala talking there. There may have been one other person, but it's definitely those three. We're all there having a conversation. I have seen that one, and that probably helps me go, I'm glad she is there.
glad she was
But
at least
again,
thought about.
yeah, and and as I said, the reason why she's not 2 or 1 is because, okay, I know this is story plot, but the New Republic ends up falling to the First Order. It's not that long afterwards. That's it's probably longer than the Vichy government in France, but probably as long as some of the in between war year part things. It's like didn't last very long and went straight into the war again.
My Republic.
Yeah, that's actually
Weimar
something
Republic.
I
Thank you.
feel. Yeah, something that I've always felt with the movies. They miss quite a bit of. They didn't so much miss it in the prequel trilogy, and I liked it for that. But it was more center stage for obvious reasons. You don't really get to see the new forms of governments running. You just see these battles with ragtag rebels or resistant fighters in one battle, and all of a sudden it's all over and they've won, or it's all over and they've lost, and you don't see that political power actually in place and working, which is what I really like about more of the TV shows and the animated series, because you get to delve into that a lot more. So I feel that bit's quite missing.
Yeah, it is. Okay, maybe this is my Star Trek background, but I do like to see a little bit of that in the peacetime and getting on well, rather than constantly warring, or at least a vengeance of peace, which I suppose is semi happening in some of the TV series, like Ahsoka. I know this is fighting against groups, but it's not actually. The governments are still in semi peace, but
Well, the government
relatively speaking.
during Ahsoka, the government is like the Republic is in what it's calling itself a sort of peacetime. The whole issue during Ahsoka is that you've got this upcoming threat of Thrawn that very few people want to believe is actually a thing, because you can't create any solid evidence to say, look, here, it's actually happening. And there's very few political individuals that are taking the threat seriously. One of those that are is Mon Mothma.
Yeah. She's. Yeah, I suppose it's because she's been there. Okay, she is an idealist, but she has been there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So,
Hey, yeah. So I think it's Matt next from number 3 pick for the middle pick.
Yes, my number 3 pick is Obi-Wan.
Yes.
Okay.
Again,
Wow.
for a lot of the things that were said, he not only was in leadership roles as far as teaching, the next steps down. He, you know, it wasn't particularly his fault. He did everything he possibly could to train Anakin to bring up that was out forces. In fact, the things that meant that there was still that piece of Anakin left in Vader, I think could arguably be put down to the teachings and of Obi-Wan.
I'd agree with that.
As you mentioned before, no other Jedi is referred to as general. It's through the entire everything else is always like Master Yoda, blah blah blah. But it's like he's legitimately referred to as General Kenobi in multiple by different people. So that's the fact that he can switch up a leadership style means that he has those fantastic leadership qualities to be able to take that forward. So yeah, he possibly could have been a bit higher on the list, but I would argue kind of slap bang in the middle, given everything else. He a little too focused on sacrificing himself, a little too focused on beating himself up on things that were out of his control and letting other things slip past him because he wasn't paying attention.
And then you see all of that, him recurring that again in the 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, up to the point of the start of the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. And you just sat there and watching that first episode, like, you've just gone and beat yourself up again over something that was totally out of your control. You did everything right. It's just like, give yourself a break,
You
man.
learn from your mistakes and don't just, otherwise you're doomed to repeat them.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm so glad you picked Obi-Wan as well.
I've had one.
So we've had, yeah, I think that's 2 duplicates. We've probably done that before. I'm sure of it.
We have indeed.
Yeah, trying to remember which one. I do have a list of our picks, but I haven't got it with us. Yeah, 2 picks. Can we make it more? That's the question. Can you help us out of Olympus?
So yes, I actually can. Now, before we do get on, I will just say that Obi-Wan Kenobi is my 4th. I can't remember if I said this when I was talking about him before. He is my favourite Star Wars character. He was going to be close to number 1, and I decided to let a few other characters have a better chance at it because I must have Obi-Wan near the top of my top 5 list several times over in these different episodes now. So he had to take a step back for a couple of others, I think, just to make things a little bit more interesting, at least for me.
Fair enough.
Number 3, I am going to put us back in Star Trek. Just try and get us away from Star Wars a little bit. We have been focusing quite a bit on it. And it is a captain of an Enterprise, but it's not the one you think it is. I am talking about Christopher Pike. Most notably, the Christopher Pike played by Anson Mount in Strange New Worlds, which I have been absolutely loving. I am so glad that he's been able to bring that character to life in a way we've never really seen before. I can't really say too much else, but his leadership style is phenomenal. He is personable. He listens to his people. He takes their thoughts on board. He inspires them. They inspire him. He's always open to learning and developing himself. He's not closed off, thinking that it's his way or the highway. He sees everything as a group team effort to make this succeed. He embodies everything that he should be within the Federation, but also doesn't follow the rules to the letter, understands that the Federation guidelines are guidelines, including General Order 1, because there are times where it simply will not work, and you've got to think about what's right as opposed to what's easy. So yeah, I've kind of rattled through that pretty quickly, but I just think Pike is a phenomenal leader, definitely deserving of the number 3 spot for me.
I'll completely agree, and he is definitely a contender for my top 1 captain. he's had that much influence, and the program Strange New Worlds is probably. I'm going to have to seriously consider whether that's my favourite or not. We'll have to wait until I'm going to have to wait until it ends, and maybe a little time to actually go. Is it? But yeah, whether it was him in Discovery season 2, helping run that, being working with, or basically the whole of the crew doing that round circle, like, excuse me, no ranks, who are you? So that to um, trust in the yarn when she says, "I believe this is this." It's like not just blindly trusting. He has a think, and it's like, yes, I do trust you. His interactions with number one, Oruna, a visit to planets on their first mission, which was it? I can't remember if it was the first their first episode, but the one when they were going onto the planet and we had those foreign factions and they rescued number one, and
Yes.
it was a case of you two behave, and this is breaking general order number one. It's like this is what we have. Don't learn by yourselves because you will annihilate yourselves like we did, and please learn
All,
from
all,
yourselves.
all brilliant points. I would add as well. I'm really glad you brought up Discovery. It's a great example of his leadership skills because he took a crew who had been utterly and totally betrayed by their captain, and so their trust is totally broken, and very, very quickly turns them around, and they trust and follow him so fast, so smoothly, and he does it so well. He really he's got this skill of inspiring people and leading the right way because of that.
He fell foul of my no main series captain.
He did indeed.
Yeah,
I might have
I'm
another
glad
one that
somebody
falls
did.
foul of that as well, but we'll have to see. Ben's like, yeah, you
Yeah,
have, haven't you? Yeah, it's number one, Tom, isn't it?
yeah. Yeah, I'll put the initials down there. So,
Yep.
God, yeah, loved him as captain. Any other thoughts, Matt, before we
No, I think that's
restart the second?
um, it's a fantastic pick. Yeah, and again, the life they've managed to bring in from what was essentially, Pike should have been the original. They did the menagerie and then was trimmed out and then was brought back in a bit of a brutal way in kind of voice box and Dalek chair. So yeah, just to see that and to see that that different kind of command style is quite refreshing.
Agreed. And to be honest, it's like Mon Mothma. He was somebody when I first saw him, I was not particularly impressed by. Um, it's it. This was what was supposed to be or was the original pilot that didn't get aired, and eventually it was just like, I'm not particularly impressed, and it was just like, but the story afterwards, especially during Disco and Strange New Worlds, is uh, pretty good. And okay, shout out to the J.J. Abrams film there with him in there.
I've forgotten the
That
actor's.
was good.
Yeah, I've forgotten the actor's name, which is terrible. But
That was so
he
good.
was really sorry.
No, I saw by.
Ah, cool. I
I
thought you were
thought as
giving me the
well.
name there. I was like, who was it? No,
Oh, with
he was brilliant as Pike as well. A very different kind of Pike to what we get in Strange New Worlds, but equally love him. He played him very well. So Ben,
in
what's your number
that
two?
case, my two is or was another general, uh, Cummins, who became leader almost by accident. He, I believe, was a farm boy to start with, um, and got brought up to be a general. And then when the leader here at the time was becoming completely mad with power and wanted all the fame and fortune, he wouldn't see it. He would not portray the leader in charge because that's just, even though that's what his species traditions are, is to cut down the leader if he's not any good. I know that's usually on a ship with your captain, but or your superior. But on this one, it was helped along by Worf because Mortok would not do this himself. Mortok ended up killing Garon for one of the greatest generals to come in and help actually win the war. In my opinion, quicker than it is. It probably would have happened originally, but the Klingon Empire would not have been in the state. It was probably not in a good state at the end anyway, but it was definitely wouldn't have been in a good state if Garon was still in charge, and definitely would not have been able to recover so well. Even if this was the fate, we believe the fate Mortok when we first see him helping start a war, he was interested, and then when we found him in a prison camp where he'd been been in prison for so long, his attitude, his charisma was out there. His ability was out there throughout the war, and he definitely helped win the war. He was probably, in my opinion, one of the most important characters in winning the war for the as Captain Cisco would have said, for the good guys. So it was one up for the good guys. Other character, any thoughts out there?
We had to have a Klingon come in there, didn't we? What a lovely pick. So happy you picked Martok.
That's a great pick.
Yeah, and it's one of the two characters that has not been budged out of my top 5 at any point during me picking this. And yeah, and it's one of the two that I would actually say succeeded in their roles as leaders and political leaders. More or less. So,
also, in various guises, I think there's an argument for Martok to be up there.
No, I agree. Again, I probably wouldn't vote for him because the Klingon way of life is probably not mine. But for this is where he done a great job for it, the species that he is, for the civilization that he was in charge of. He done a good job for them, and he even helped his allies when it came to this. Whether they ended up fighting later, like after the Second World War, in this on Earth, but who knows? But with his main allies of Earth or the Federation and the Romulan Empire. So in that case, I think I've left everybody stunned there. So for a second, but
that was number 2. Cool.
Yeah, it was brilliant. I've got nothing else to add. That's the thing. Is you've rounded that off very, very well.
So my second pick is obviously one kind of hallmark of a great leader is to be able to slightly bend the rules instead of just breaking them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in this pick, my second pick is a slight rule bend because technically he is a Federation captain. And that is Captain Jellicoe.
Hang on a minute. You've picked Jellicoe. Jellicoe. Is Jellicoe not the one that takes over the Enterprise when Picard?
Yeah.
The 4 Lights episodes, yeah.
Yeah.
When Picard was captured by the Cardassians, and there was only 4 lights.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he came in to take over a ship that was intrinsically wraps around the way that Picard led.
Yeah.
Now, as I said, arguably Picard was a great leader. The problems with the leadership in this is that you would never, apart from in a Star Trek episode or in a Star Trek role-playing episode, you never send the bridge crew down to everything because that's ridiculous. That's what you have people for. But anyway, so yeah, Picard getting captured and going, and Jellicoe had to come in and do almost the impossible, and that was essentially stop the flagship of the Federation from
Mutineering?
mutineering, maybe, yes, against the entire Federation because they wanted to go and get their captain back. Like, imagine the strength of leadership to be able to take an entire crew that is hell bent on doing something that ultimately isn't what they should be doing. They should be, he had massive clashes with Riker, who was just being a bit petulant at that point. And, you've come into a very closed group. You've come in at the head of this, and everyone has been working together phenomenally, all of them highly decorated officers. You remove the first officer because he isn't doing what he should be doing and replace him like that. He kicked Riker out, brought in Data. Yes, he was a bit hard ass, and part of the thing was having to sort of mellow, but actually he kept that crew not only safe and got them doing their jobs as they should be doing it, but stopped them from basically throwing away their entire careers and everything on there. The fact that he was then used in lower decks as the punchline of Mariner worried about the new commander coming in, don't want him to be Jellicoe-esque, was a nice little nod. But he did something right. He became an admiral when you got to not Prometheus. What's the protostar?
Oh.
Prodigy.
Mm.
And it only began with a P there somewhere. So he's an admiral that Janeway speaks to about sending the Dauntless, I think it is, out to. That is given a slightly bad light in that one, but he comes in. He's already an established captain. He just has a very different style to Picard, and for that, I thought once I got rid of all of the top spine of main character captains, he was the one that stood out as having the stuff.
The what I love every time some of my favorite episodes of TNG, and it's because of the disruption it causes for the right reasons. And every time I watch it, I say to my wife how brilliant it is because he is so disruptive, because he gets them all on their tones. He upsets the apple cart and really makes them have to think and adjust and change and yeah, exactly. And realize to your point that there's life and work and relationships and everything outside of Jean-Luc. If Jean-Luc was to be assimilated by the Borg or drop dead, you've got to carry on. And that means working differently.
Because there's Picard could have easily and probably at some point would have been transferred out. That's the whole point. Or they get transferred out. They have to learn to work with other people in different styles, and it just
I'm pretty sure he must have given up a couple of admiralty positions at different stages, in a similar vein to how Riker kept giving up captaincy roles.
Yeah.
I think there was at least one we hear about in the TNG era series. TNG era series.
But in Picard, he has been an admiral, so he must have taken it on at some point.
Well, I'm sure he becomes an admiral. I'm sure he becomes an admiral. It's at some. It might actually be when they first realize Hobus is going to explode. I think it might be at that point that he becomes an admiral and takes on that task force. I might need
thinking
to
about it. I might
that.
have heard that in one of the books. Actually, thinking about it when they released a book just before Picard series start. Actually, thinking about it, sounds familiar.
But we're talking about Picard now instead of Jellicoe.
Yeah, but Jericho. Okay, he did not make my top 5 list, but give you, yeah, first rate opinion. That's it. But yeah, give you Duke. Was given that. I think he could, if the crew worked together better with him, he we would have had a different opinion on him. And
We were
one
meant
thing
to
I
have
did,
that opinion, though. That's the thing. We
yes,
were meant to have that opinion of him, but
agreed.
also see what he was actually doing the entire time, because it was
Yeah,
absolutely brutal, but absolutely the right thing to do.
Also,
Yeah.
the only point that sort of I'd take points off him is he did something that was a little unforgivable, and this probably got a little bit over Olympus's head. But Ben, what was the thing he did in Picard's ready room?
Oh, I know what he did. He got rid of the
got rid of the
fish.
fish,
And what is the fish called?
Livingston.
The Livingston, which is where we got the name for the well, twofold. The name for our ship on hailing frequencies is the Livingston, partly after Dr. Livingston, but also the fish in the lionfish in Picard's office.
Yeah. You know, I'm not sure if it was during the Jellicoe episodes or not. I think it might have been, but you know that lionfish died. I
The same
know.
one.
I know. It was really the same one, but apparently it died and they had to replace it, but they didn't. It was the same fish.
Yeah.
Because I think they put it into storage
Yeah.
on the set or something and it got too cold for a little thing.
Oh god. One thing I'm gonna give him due for is getting Troy into an actual uniform.
Yes.
Which
That
they
only
didn't
took,
really
what,
do.
5 seasons?
Yeah, yeah. Which I don't think. I don't think that other than one episode, I don't think they ever did an Enterprise with T'Pol, even though she became a Starfleet officer. And okay, 7 and 9 was never a Federate Starfleet officer, or member of the crew from that respect, so they couldn't have done it with her. But they could have done it with her, but yeah.
I was happy for that at last, and you know what I noticed as well, which I really really liked. That's a change that doesn't go back. She stays in uniform for the rest of it.
Yeah, and I'm not. I think it's actually called this on the thing, but on Twitter there is a Jellicoe feed with him doing puns and everything on that, and I think I think it's actually called Jellicoe or Captain Jellicoe, one of the two.
I'm gonna have to
But,
find that.
yeah, give them a shout out. They're good up on Twitter. So, in that case, Olympus, what's your penultimate pick?
We are going
Can't
back
even
to
say that.
Star Wars.
Ooh.
And to someone, I guess, who becomes Mon Mothma's right-hand lady, Leia Organa.
Yeah.
She, I mean, she's a princess in her own right, an older one. I'm not entirely sure how the daughter of a senator is a princess, by the way. I've never worked that out. But she's a princess, which means she's a leader of some respect. So we'll take that. But more notably, obviously, the leadership role she has and continues in the Rebel Alliance, which then leads to her time in the War Council during the New Republic, which then leads to her leading the Resistance very strongly as well. Very strong-minded, very powerful female character who is opinionated, sometimes abrasive, but gets the job done. She has a goal. She heads towards it, and again, she has that ability to inspire people around her to follow her in whatever she is trying to achieve. So yeah, number 2, Leia Organa.
It was on my short list. Oh, not my short list, but she was my first list I did. She was on there, but unfortunately, didn't get there. But I'm glad you picked her. The senator, a leader of the resistance. I don't know if this stage was canon or not, but I think she's eventually leader of the New Republic. Yeah, love the character. Yeah, enjoyed her.
And don't forget, also Jedi.
Yeah, I'm glad they actually did something with that. They should have done it earlier, but
Force user, maybe not Jedi.
I don't know. She
yeah.
was training with Luke. That lets me. That helps me think she was at the very least a Padawan.
Yeah,
She definitely,
But
she
was
definitely didn't become a knight.
but was Luke a Jedi really? Well, probably was. He was trained by Yoda, but
I'd call that one of the what is it? It was a term that was first introduced to Star Wars in Ahsoka. It was a type of Jedi that's trained outside of the temple. I can't remember what they said it was called. It'll come back to me. We'll put it in the comments. But it's a special group of Jedi that are trained outside of the temple. So the likes of Luke, Leia will have been included in that for as long as she trained. Ezra Bridger.
well, that's from that
Yeah.
group.
Cal
What his name is.
Kestis will be counted. Oh no, Cal Kestis was part trained in
He
with the
started off.
Jedi Temple actually, so he won't count. Yeah, there's quite a few. Then there's Sabine Wren. So that's another one. Yeah, there's actually a fair few.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't have much to say about it. She deserves a lot more to be said, but she speaks for herself. The name, great character.
So what's your top pick then?
And then number one.
Yeah. Sorry, that's my yeah. So I'm gonna stay with the original trilogy, but we don't notice this person as a leader from the original trilogy. It wasn't until this person had a series of his own that we actually found out him about leader, and that is Boba Fett. He was the demo of Mos Espa. Basically, I think the person that rank also is near as damn it the default leader of Tatooine, from what I've read, but he's definitely a almost the mayor, the leader of that area, and he looked after everybody. No, he was. He didn't look after everybody. He didn't look after the people who were being idiots, of course. But he tried to run that city fairly, and I think he actually succeeded in that. And they had to have a big fight at the end to stop stop certain parties taking over. Yeah, I should have started off as that better, but yeah, his leadership and tenure in that series was pretty good in myself, and I would be happy for him to defend my village where I live or my local town and look after it.
I'm gonna have to rewatch Book of Boba Fett. I don't disagree with you. I do agree with you in everything you're saying. I just feel that and it's just one of the constructive criticisms I have for that show, is that it doesn't take enough time to properly embed you in and make you feel a lot of that as you're watching it. It felt a bit rushed for me, and it never felt to me like he was the actual daimyo of that area. It just felt like, oh, I've got this seat now, I'm gonna go off and do things. And yeah, I felt like it was lacking in that respect for me. But that could have just been a mix of me not being too enamored with the show, or missing an element of it. But as I say, I do agree with you. The position he was in, and what I know he will have been organising and doing, whether even off screen in that position, absolutely. I mean, that town was thriving before that final battle where everything got blown up.
Yeah. Okay, there is a bit of a sugarcoating view of it, but I don't necessarily think that's necessarily a bad thing. Okay, they could have improved it.
I mean, he was the leader of an organized crime network. He's still a leader by definition.
Yeah, he was the leader of a crime syndicate.
No arguments there.
I agree with you on the whole sort of mayor/sheriff thing of that town, because I think the daimyo is meant to be that as well. So there's two fronts of leadership there right away.
Yeah, and it is not necessarily did I enjoy the whole series. Do I think there was more? Could they have done better? Yeah, probably. I did enjoy it, but they probably could have done more and gone more into it. But I still, yeah, as I said, I called it sugarcoating. I enjoyed the sugarcoating. It was nice,
Oh,
in
and I'm
my
not going to
opinion.
lie
But,
and say that I found the whole show boring. I did enjoy it. It's just probably my least favourite Star Wars media. That's not to say I didn't enjoy it. I did take some good bits away from it. I got the nostalgia, but it really was Mando. That's whatever season 0.5, 2.5, I think it was.
yeah.
And,
Oh,
and that wasn't a
I,
bad thing for me either. I know it was meant to be a focus on Boba Fett, but you know what? I love the fact that that Boba and Din Djarin managed to team up and whatnot. I do like that.
agree. Yeah. Okay, I was slightly peeved with those episodes originally jumping in. I still am to a degree. One of the episodes, I'll go, cool, let's have one trying to recruit Dinjarin. The other one, great episode, but you could have left that for the Mandalorian, in my opinion.
No,
But
you could have.
and had
You
more.
definitely could have.
Yeah.
But I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it.
Any other opinions there, Matt?
No, I think that's yeah, it's a definitely it was that's a left field pick. He wasn't yeah, he didn't come up in any of my thought processes, but I can kind of see where you went with it.
And yeah, in my opinion, he done a great job for a crime city and for Tatooine level of leadership, in my opinion.
Oh,
But
indeed, indeed, and
yeah,
again, not one that I had considered either. So
yeah,
that makes it very interesting.
yeah. Would he have worked on Coruscant? Probably not. But yeah. Anyway, Matt, what's your number one pick?
So, great men do not seek power; they have power thrust upon them, which are the words of Kalis, and they were said by Worf to what I would say is the best leader in this, which is General Martok.
Wow. Okay,
Um,
that's at least three picks we've had.
yeah,
Yeah, three picks. God, I didn't
um,
expect that. That was our rules.
yeah, Martok. I sort of left off saying bits beforehand, but like he helped keep people together in the concentration camp. So Camp 371, I think it was, or whatever it was, the after he was replaced by a changeling, where he was fighting the Jem'Hadar daily. That's where he lost his eye. He helped kind of motivate and keep other prisoners kind of focused. And there he kind of went down a little bit, but he had been there for years, and lots of people had died regardless. Um, as that he managed to convince Gowron to join with the Federation to move things forward. He realized his own mistakes and was able to learn from them. So he um, had was kind of showing some poor leadership sort of skills, and then was confronted by Worf, who very nearly could have beaten him to take over his place on the bird of prey, um, but allowed him to keep face. Obviously, got stabbed for his trouble, but helped keep Martok's faith, and ability to lead, and that ultimately put him as Chancellor. Um, he, yeah, fantastic. And again, from just other points of view, I'm pretty sure he officiated at Worf and Jadzia's wedding. He helped convince Worf when he was getting cold feet to continue with that. So he brought in sort of personal stories about his wife. I want to say Stella or something along those lines, about how even marriage was another type of battle, and you needed to the leadership skills you needed within fighting that back and forward. I said once you eliminate all the kind of Federation captains that flagships of these shows, there are some fantastic leaders, but Martok took the kind of the top for me.
I cannot
I
add anything
can't
else to
complain too
that.
much about it. Yeah. Yeah, he only by me. He only got beaten by one person, and I could have easily had it the other way around. To be honest,
I did wonder about Ducats, but yeah.
I'm sure I'll get into him later and why I didn't pick him. But yeah,
Phenomenal
do
choice.
you have anything else to add?
My number one choice is Martok. Just kidding.
Oh God.
Just kidding. Although it really could have been. I've really
So
enjoyed listening to both of you when you've been talking about Martok in different ways. It's helped me appreciate the character in a way I probably didn't see too much at the time. And a big part of that is because I've only watched the S9 once, and I loved it, but I've only watched it through once, so I need to get back around and watch it another couple of times, and I am about due
Why
to
is
do so.
DS9 the best Star Trek show? And if you disagree, why are you wrong?
Exactly that. Exactly that. It is brilliant, although the best show is TNG.
I could agree with you, but then we'd both be wrong.
Yeah. Hang on a minute, what?
yeah.
Love it. Love it.
Uh,
So my number
Your
one.
number one.
My number one. I'll introduce this with a quote, though Ben, I think, already knows, and I think so do you, Matt. It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness, that is life.
I was about to try to show my Varkins, but it's in light pencil, so I probably won't. But Jean-Luc Picard, I presume,
Yeah.
rather than Data.
Yep. Good old JL. Mic drop. He's clearly the best. The end. Game over. Go now.
I specifically brought the rule in that I was going to call the Picard rule. Is that that's why I removed that, because shows every quality of a great leader. Like I said, you can go back through that list of leadership qualities, and you could probably pinpoint an entire episode for each of those 12.
Absolutely agree with you. You definitely could. Pardon me.
There's the reason why I didn't want to. Well, half the reason I didn't want to go down the captain route as well myself. It was just like A was because it's an election. I decided to go political, and B, I knew Picard would definitely be in there, as well as probably Pike, and I'd probably consider Cisco. And
Well, I was going to say, you could easily have had a top five. You could have Jean-Luc, Cisco, Pike, Kirk, Janeway. There's five. You could have had Jonathan Archer, Jellicoe.
I would have put Archer above a couple of those others.
Me too, actually. Me too. And I'm not going to lie, Archer's on my honorable mentions because he was very nearly in the top five as well when you consider the task he had from the get-go and how he approached it and what he was able to achieve through those 4 seasons that we get to watch with him. But that's, again, going off on a tangent. I guess right now I want to talk about Jean-Luc. It was such a privilege, and I was so excited to be able to see him return for the 3 seasons of Picard. And again, I know there's some criticism about seasons 1 and 2 for varying reasons. I share some of the constructive sides of it, maybe, but I actually don't care about them. Like, I feel almost nitpicky about a lot of them. I just love the fact that my favorite Star Trek captain of all time was back again, and I get to see what he was getting up to later in life, the things he'd been struggling with, and him starting to reconcile and resolve those. And then the phenomenal season 3 where you get everyone back together again. And I know so much of that was nostalgia, but it was nostalgia done the right way. It was just beautifully done, I think. But then, seeing the crew, which back during the TNG era were so, as we said before, wrapped around Picard and his way of working, his way of thinking, to see how so many of them had split off and didn't quite agree with his approaches anymore, his way of doing things, was equally a nice view of how all of those characters had developed in different ways over the last, 20, 30 odd years that it was meant to have been in that timeline. I could talk about JL forever. I never normally call him JL either, but there you go.
Yeah.
I'm starting to do a Raffiism.
Yeah.
I think there is one beautifully poignant moment that sums all of that up. You do need to have seen everything up to the point, but it's the very final scene of the end of TNG, where for the first time he walks into the cabin
Yeah.
and he gets them to deal him in.
I had a tear in my eye watching that for the first time. And because my wife was with
Sky's
me,
the
and
limit.
I put, yeah, sky's the limit. Put my hand on my wife's knee, and I was like, Erin, I'm like totally so like tearing up here. And she's like, what's wrong with you? I was like, it's the first time he's ever joined them.
Yeah.
It's a big thing. She's like, aye, whatever. But no, it was such a big thing. Which is why I liked it when they did that again at the end of season 3 of Picard. And they actually did that. I was reading an article. They just set up the cameras and they let all of the cast sit down and just spend 40 minutes or more playing cards and just having a right good old laugh and a joke and whatever. And that was them actually doing that. They weren't necessarily playing their characters. I think it was a lovely way to do it.
Yeah, and the cast was famous, and they've got lots of clips of them all getting along, joking with each other, which didn't always happen in the other series around there. Some of them were, I'm not going to say more professional, but they were, this is my job.
Yeah.
Coming in and out, and these always seemed buzzy whenever I was seen backstage.
That was
Stuff.
that was Picard's words. Sorry, Matt.
I was just saying, listen to Troy talk about time on the studios around DS9, and you get a very different picture of how those two series were run.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might have been a conversation I might have been thinking about subconsciously, actually. Yeah.
I've missed that. I'm intrigued. Which one was better or worse?
Yeah,
It's,
she suggested that everyone was like actually happy and in having a good mood, but Deep Space Nine not so much.
Yeah.
but
Was
if
that the beginning
if
of DS9 though, as well? Because I mean, don't get me wrong, they had their own problems, didn't they? They had their struggles in the initial seasons, which is why they introduced Voyager. Because it was, I find DS9's a trek that wasn't really appreciated as much in its time, but is absolutely adored now. It's like it's aged very well. But then I know that for the first season and a half of TNG, the set wasn't the happiest either. And a big part of that was because Patrick Stewart, who had been so used to acting in all these plays and whatnot, and the way he was brought up in that world was very strict, and you have to be XY, you have to take it seriously, and the rest of the cast were just trying to have a big laugh to the point that he got ridiculed a little bit on set one day during a meeting where he tried to have this big speech with them, explaining why they had to take it all more seriously. And I think it was Denise Crosby let out a funny joke that just destroyed him. And he walked off rather embarrassed and sulking with himself, and then actually reflected, came back, and from that point on, everyone gelled, and it was utterly phenomenal. So it's almost like he needed that kick in the arse to kind of get on the right wavelength with it. I didn't realize that kind of struggle was happening in DS9 though. I'll need to do some reading.
to be honest, it's horses for courses. Yeah, you can still do something by doing it a different way and succeed. Yeah.
I mean, you can't say DS9 didn't succeed in its own right. I mean, how many seasons were there in the end?
7, yeah.
I think.
And
Yeah.
you do, or I've seen characters, at least on social media and at events, joking and laughing with each other and stuff. So
I think
at
she
least
referred to it as like Deep Sleep 9 or something. It was like it just found it boring.
It wasn't loved the way it is now. Back when it was first out, and it's because it was a totally different track. It was so political. It was a little bit more of a slow burn.
Loved it from the beginning, and then I liked Voyager, but Voyager just really felt it felt so light and empty in comparison.
Yeah, and you know I found, because obviously I watched Voyager through for the first time, and it was brilliant the whole way through. If I ever try and rewatch Voyager, there are big chunks of seasons that I actually miss out because I can go in through it and I was like, actually, don't fancy that one, don't fancy that one, don't fancy that one. And it's not because they're not good episodes, it's just because I never really gelled or liked them very much. Whereas DS9, again, I've only watched it once, but I was hooked on nearly every single episode, despite the fact it's slower. It's more like a political drama in some senses a lot of the time, but it really makes you think, and it really hits a lot of very strong messages home, which Voyager doesn't as much. But I guess a big part of that is because Voyager was designed to be like TNG, to try and appeal to that kind of audience, because they'd lost that audience with DS9.
I think for me, Kess sucks. Neelix is dull until he kind of comes out a little bit.
Yeah.
Harry Kim is dull until he kind of moves forward. Paris is all kind of smoke but no real substance, and most of the way through, like it would, I could actually been better if he'd had been, because he was essentially the same character that the actor played in Next Gen, and actually, why didn't he keep it? It was just a change to his dad being an admiral, but that didn't really do a huge amount in the series anyway.
And he was meant to, because he was originally meant to be Locarno, but they changed it. I think it was something to do with. Was it something to do with the rights to something in that episode?
That's what I've heard, but I don't know how true that's. I don't know if that's a false. What's the word? I forgot what it's called.
Fake
news.
Fake news
Very
or old mother's tale.
I do
That's
love.
what I've heard.
I do love, again, though, going back to Lower Decks for a second, how they play on that when they see Locarno for the first time, and you've got Boimler and Rutherford, I think, at the two compositions, and one of them's like, he looks just like Tom Paris, and I was like, I don't see it. I do love that bit. Anyway, I've digressed totally again. I'm sorry, but I'll round it off. Jean-Luc Picard is by far for me the best leader out of both franchises. Love him to bits, and I'm so happy to hear that Patrick Stewart is now actually considering returning the character again, because he kept saying that Picard season 3 would be the last one, and I think he actually enjoyed it and came to life with it so much that he's considering renewing that character a little bit more, in one sense or another, if the story's right. So fingers crossed.
Yeah. Oh, hopefully it doesn't push it too far, but it would be nice.
It would be lovely to see him
Okay.
as a small cameo or something, and say, a Star Trek legacy, wink wink, nudge nudge, relevant people. That'd be nice.
Oh, so before we go on to roundups and honourable mentions, I did put a poll up on YouTube a while back, going, who is your favourite leader rather than who do you think's the best leader. I had 4 people: Mon Mothma, Thera Rylak from Discovery, Palpatine, and Martok. Palpatine actually got 0 votes in this. I was expecting somebody to go for it, even though he was the big bad for a lot of it. Rylak from Discovery got 3rd, and then Mothma got 2nd, and Martok got 1st for that. So yeah, lots of love for Martok there. Tell you what, let's go honourable mentions, and then we'll do a roundup, everybody, and then the scores. I think. I suppose I better do mine actually, because I don't know why, because I went first.
Let's keep it in order.
Yeah, keep in order. Yeah. So I'll leave this to 5. I did have Go to Cut, but because I don't think he was a top dog or equivalent power to be in the top dog, he was always sort of the person who looked after Bajor, but he wasn't really the leader. He was just the military person. And when he was in charge, the representative for Cardassia with the Dominion, did he really have any power? A little bit, but no, not really, in my opinion. And he was, when he'd done the negotiating, de facto leader, but not official title for me, so he dropped out today. The other persons I had was Rylak from Discovery, there, part Bajoran, part Cardassian, part human character. She actually impressed me as a leader, actually, as the president of the Federation. I also had. I've just suddenly had a mind blank on his name. Lando Calrissian, leader of Cloud City, there, and I suppose Bespin. The reason he didn't got in there, he portrayed everybody to Darth Vader. It was like, oh, really? And the only other person I considered was Satil Shan for head of the Jedi Order in Star Wars: The Old Republic. I know Matt said he didn't play the game, but you may recognise the name Shan from KOTOR. So, a relation. So talking about Matt, any thoughts? What's your honourable mentions?
So my, as I sort of mentioned, I went off killed the way through was Kai Wynn, Commander Rex, and I also kind of floated around possibly Voyager's Doctor, as I was looking at different leadership qualities. Obviously, he's not the captain of a ship, but does run sick bay, has kind of moved past the program that he's got to be able to evolve, and you've got the compassion side with Tess, with other members of the crew, where actually the whole point of his bedside manner being very non-compassionate from where he is, it shows that kind of push towards that sort of thing. So he was going to be he kind of was floating around the edges. And I was given another one that I thought about. I know one of you. I can't remember if you both met Laura, who's actually my business partner in real life. Who is a massive Trek fan, and she suggested Trip actually from obviously the engineer from Enterprise.
Well, yeah, he's a head of engineering. He would have a team of engineers under him for starters before you consider his relationships with the rest of the bridge crew.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I like those ideas. Love it. Like we went through like different ideas for who we wanted to pick. So,
yeah.
But here, even though we had three of the same picks for a few of us. Olympus.
So I'm going to rattle through 10 and then a bonus 11th. Your main character, aka Revan in KOTOR. The main character, aka what's her name again? In KOTOR 2. She's got a canon name. It's gone from my head now. But your main character in KOTOR 2. Your main character in Star Wars: The Old Republic. If you're the knight from the get-go. If you're not, then from Knights of the Fallen Empire and Eternal Throne. Qui-Gon Jinn. Why couldn't he? I just felt like his guidance and teaching of Obi-Wan Kenobi was paramount to Obi-Wan becoming who he was. Anakin Skywalker, for similar reasons to Obi-Wan, especially when it comes to him being a general for the clones. And also his training of Ahsoka, who is my second favorite Star Wars character of all time. Because she wouldn't be who she is without Anakin's guidance pre-Vader. Commander Rex is on there. Hunter from the Bad Batch is utterly phenomenal leader. Bail Organa in his own right as senator. William Riker, Jonathan Archer, Catherine Janeway. That I feel sometimes that there are elements. No, I know exactly. Yeah, hashtag justice for Tuvix. There are decisions she makes at points and the way she goes about things, which I think aren't very good leadership decisions. But when you consider where she is and what she's trying to do, I think she does a pretty good job. Like if Jean-Luc was out there, he'd have done a better one. But I don't think many other people could have tackled things the way she did. And there are probably a couple of decisions she makes that Jean-Luc couldn't have made.
Yeah.
Which actually allowed her crew to survive where John Luke's might have died.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got to look at she had more harder decisions to make, is what I'm trying to say, I guess,
Yeah.
in a lot of cases due to where they were. Grand Nigger Zek, because he was utterly hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my bonus one is Captain becomes Admiral Adama from Battlestar Galactica, because I've not thrown in a non-Trek or non-Star Wars one in a while, but as a leader in a sci-fi show, Adama is utterly brilliant. And again, when you consider all the different situations he finds himself in, eventually leading an entire fleet which consists of the last of humanity and trying to keep everyone alive and functioning. Yeah, utterly brilliant. So that's all of my honorable mentions.
And one person I thought of when we were having a discussion before, which I nearly forgot and put on a different paper for a note, is Abraham Lincoln did appear in TOS. So
I didn't know
it's a
that.
floating body in space. So just give him a shout out for that. So
Brilliant.
but
So
any predictions on the scores?
I
Who won?
think that Star Wars has won, but only just.
Yeah, which I think is a travesty in this instance, but yes.
Agreed. We have so many good choices in Star Trek. I think all of us focus too much on trying to help Star Wars out.
Yep.
It was very close. It was an 8-7 score on this one, and it was Star Wars which took an early lead and hasn't managed to didn't even though it got very close towards the end, it didn't manage to give it up. So, any other thoughts before we do any other business? We missed that.
None from me, apart from thank you both very much. It's been a very enjoyable conversation, running through our picks again, and there were plenty. But where there were a couple of duplicates, which is always nice to see like-minded ideas coming out. It was great to see a few different ones and a few surprises as well that I hadn't considered coming into it too.
Even though some of the picks, they were for different reasons, which was nice.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is why I like these like this actually. Yeah, we did think about it the same way. Or not the same way. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. Tell you what, Matt, where can we find you if you want to be found?
I mean, there's so many different answers I could give to that. But in this sort of circles, still around on hailing frequency. We do have another few things in the pipeline. It is literally just down to us. When you've got 5-6 people trying to coordinate diaries between work, children, and other things, it becomes a little bit problematic. But there are some new things on the horizon.
Definitely, and I hope to give that a shout out if it's the thing I'm thinking of, as and when it happens.
And I suppose technically also, although again has fallen a little bit by the wayside, I have a secondary company where I make board games, and we have one that we're hoping to release some point this year. It is a cyberpunk style card game, which has been a little while in the making, but yeah, hopefully that'll come out soon. That's through Matthew and Michael.
Nice.
Oh, cool. If you have any links for that, please pass it this way, and we'll put it up in the information in the YouTube. Oh, and our podcast, Olympus.
So you can find me at Olympus0511 across Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter. I think that's about everything. And of course, please don't include the space between Olympus and the 0. Otherwise, you're just going to get a long list of cameras, which might not be a bad thing. Maybe you're looking for cameras, but if you don't include the space, you'll get me followed by a list of cameras.
Yeah. And just a reminder, we should have said this at the beginning, but we can find this under TrekWars, Duels Across the Stars on podcasts via Apple, Spotify. I think we're even on Podbean at the moment. And you can find it on YouTube via TrekWars and Fantasy, which is my my account where I do this, various gaming from Star Wars and Star Trek games, including live streams. We've been doing a review for the Acolyte recently,
yes.
and we're planning on with Olympus, and we're hoping to, or I'm hoping to do more reviews in the future. And you can also find me on Twitch at TrekWars and Fantasy, Twitter at TrekWars Fantasy because there's not enough letters, and probably on TikTok as well, TrekWars and Fantasy. So thank you if you've got this far, and can I just say thank you for watching, and may the force be with you.
Thank you very, very much, Matt. Special thanks for joining us today as well.
Thank you
Really
very much for having
appreciate
me.
you jumping in.
Absolute pleasure.
Great, thank you.
May the force be with you.